So today we will be learning about the classroom practice of effective questioning and how it is a vital part of successful learning and how it initiates overall inquiry in students. So first of all, moving on to the introduction. Questions presented during class can be used to challenge and stimulate students, direct their means of thinking, assess student learning, and provoke interest in students about the topic currently being taught. So questions also assist with the clarification of ideas and they induce curiosity in students. So there are many functions of classroom questions, such as to motivate students to become involved and engaged in lessons, evaluate and review student learning and understanding, develop critical thinking skills, nurture insights, and assess achievement and prior knowledge in students. Most educators would freely agree that effective questioning is a significant facet of teaching and learning. In her text, Classroom Questioning, Kathleen Cotton outlines that a question is any sentence which has an interrogative form or function and are instructional cues or stimuli that convey to students the context and the content elements to be learned. So this definition pretty much describes just how imperative effective questions are in establishing and reviewing learning in students. So as mentioned above, there are many different types of functions of questions, and it is therefore a high importance and priority for educators to learn how to ask and propose questions in a successful and effective manner when striving to become skilled and competent teachers and educators. As listed below, there are distinct types of questions, three different types actually. So there is eliciting, convergent and divergent questions. So to start off, we'll just delve a little bit into eliciting questions. And they are the first questions the teacher usually asks learners about a particular subject, and the questions that change the topic or that alter the direction of a learning activity. So they increase the level of learning as they are more often followed up by more in-depth questions that further probe the learner for more information and understanding. The next type of questions are convergent questions, and these usually require minimal thinking and the answers are quite predictable and usually are factual. So they are used to verify that the student has retained the information and are quite frequently used in classrooms. So when students are seemingly disengaged in what is being taught, a convergent question can attest how much of the lesson and the content the learner has actually understood and retained. So on placement, I would frequently use convergent questions in order to assess whether my students that seemed a bit idle understood the matter. So for example, in Year 11 English, if we were doing persuasive techniques and I had just gone over what inclusive language meant, I would pose a convergent question directed at one of the students and say, for example, Matt, do you know what inclusive language is? And then he would say, yes, language that includes first person, second person, and directs to the reader. And then I could understand that he has given me a factual, predictable answer and understands what is being taught. The last type of questions are divergent questions, and these involve a higher level of thinking and are used to stimulate a variety of responses, for example, in a discussion. And the answers are usually quite arbitrary and unpredictable. So they kind of provoke insights and deeper thinking responses from students. So on placement again and in the classroom, it is important to use divergent questions when maybe having a debate or a discussion, as they will probe the students for more information and gain different insights and opinions from everybody. So knowing the difference between the different types of questions is quite important. It allows students to understand what type of questions would be needed for the classroom discussion, for the lesson at hand, and it allows teachers to know which questions to accurately allocate and dispense and what would be suited for different scenarios. So what would retrieve the most appropriate answers for their topic at hand or their lesson. So throughout my placement, I felt that it was actually quite easy to allocate what sort of questions should be used in different scenarios and distinguish between what would be more suited, a question that would be more suited for discussion and one that would be more suited for an individual student or directed at the class as a whole. During placement, it also became very clear to me just how important effective questioning is to assess student learning and to invoke interest in addition to challenging the students as I got on to learn about the different types of questions and could effectively allocate them in different scenarios, I realised what would give me the best answer that I was looking for and give the students the best opportunity to express their opinions and ideas. So moving on to the next slide now, we're going to go on to phrasing and wait time. So questioning is only really effective if it consists of correct question phrasing and attentiveness to how the question is delivered and the time between the question and the expected response. So wait time is a crucial factor in effective questioning, and in his article Techniques Research-Based Strategies for Teachers, Fries-Gaither states that despite the traditional understanding that a fast pace of instruction is good for a student, they've actually discovered that including more wait time for an expected response actually endorses higher achievement in students, and that about 3 to 5 seconds is an appropriate wait time as it gives the students enough time to compose their answers. Fries-Gaither again states that increased wait time results in improved achievement and retention of the topic, longer responses, decrease in interruption, and an increase in student-to-student interactions. So it's quite good that there's a wait time before a response is expected from a student in order to give them the opportunity to think through their thoughts, clarify their ideas, and respond. During my practicum, I would tell the students and let them know that they had time to answer, and so that would remove the pressure of requesting and expecting a quite immediate response, which I believe is ineffective as they won't have time to gather their ideas. So obviously an important part of effective questioning is the phrasing of the question. If a question is phrased incorrectly, it can lead to confused and disinterested students, and we want students to be confident in answering questions, and they won't be if they are puzzled by what is being asked of them. Also, ambiguous questions are not fitting for a student, as the criteria for how the question should be answered isn't quite clear. Also, questions should never contain more than one question. For example, what is the difference between hyperbole and exaggeration, and how they also similar, should be broken down into 2 questions. Moving on now to the third element of effective questioning is positive feedback. So I, like many other researchers, believe that positive feedback is imperative for motivating students, as well as rewarding students for providing the correct answers. If the answer is a little off track, positive feedback and positive prompting can get the students to redirect their ideas in the right direction. So positive feedback also helps build confidence in learners and encourages active participation in class, as students will feel as though they can contribute without the pressure of answering incorrectly or the fear. Teachers should never be critical of student responses, but rather be encouragingly and redirect them into the right track. So redirection and probing of students is highly effective when concentrated on individual student responses. So they can positively tease the answer out of the student and encourage them to keep going even if they don't know the answer. And eventually, students will realise that they do have some understanding of the topic at hand, and they will learn which areas they need to improve on. So moving on now, the final element of effective questioning is direct questions. So educators need to learn how to dispense direct questions to be effective questioning and improve their effective questioning skills. So questions that are directed at an individual student are an incredibly effective way to monitor individual progress and ensure that students are taking responsibility for their own learning. Direct questioning is valuable for disengaged students, as by posing a question solely to them, it compels them to engage in the topic at hand. Throughout each lesson, teachers should aim to ask at least every student in the class at least one direct question. This will allow educators to see how the students are progressing with the content on an individual level. So direct questioning is a fundamental part of being an effective questioner. So throughout placement, I made it my goal to improve my direct questioning skills, as I was a bit nervous directing responses and questions at individual students, as I didn't want to make them feel pressured. But after doing much research, I realised it is a really valuable way to ensure that students are learning the material. So in one particular class that required students to relate media to dispossession, I directly questioned individual students that did not contribute to the previous discussion so that I could evaluate their progress and see if they were actually understanding the content. I also noted that a few students revelled in the opportunity to provide an answer and to share their insights, as they might feel that they are a bit dominated by other students in a group discussion. So when I individually chose them to give me a response, they were able to clarify their ideas and opinions and share their knowledge without fear of taking over somebody else or anything like that. So I thought that was quite an effective way to use direct questioning in classrooms. This concludes my presentation on effective questioning as a classroom practice, and I hope that you too now understand just how vital it is for effective questioning skills and how they are used to motivate, challenge and evaluate student learning in the classroom.